So my name is Matt Whitman. I'm the principal with Whitman Estes Architects, and I'm here with Haley Martin Hampton from West Seattle Realty, as well as Faith Swickard from our office.
Hi.
And we're going to be sharing the Tsuga Townhomes project. So we have a slideshow that we'll rotate through, which describes the project and also frames it in a way that explains the strategies that we used, reference to landscape design. Whitman Estes are architects as well as landscape designers, and we saw this project as an opportunity to use landscape design strategies to employ a kind of architecture that is very connected to nature and is very indoor-outdoor. So we'll go through, it's about a 20-minute slideshow, and we do want people to chime in with questions during the talk. If you have a question or thought, please do let us know. And there's also the chat on the side. Okay, should we do it?
Do it.
Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us. We're here with Faith Swickard from Whitman Estes Architects, Haley from West Seattle Realty, and I am Matt Whitman, principal at Whitman Estes Architects in Georgetown. Thanks for coming to the Green Home Tour. A few words about the session is being recorded, so please use chat if you have any questions or thoughts, if you don't want to be recorded, and please mute your mic if you aren't speaking. And it's an informal presentation, so please do chime in, and if you have any questions or thoughts as we're going through it, please do speak out, and we can also have a kind of group discussion at the end. So this project is called Tsuga Townhomes. It is a 3-unit urban infill townhome duplex and a main house on a 5,000 square foot lot in West Seattle. And we called the project Tsuga because that is the scientific name of the Western hemlock tree. And the Western hemlock was a wood species that we used in the casework and screens and carpentry of the project. So that became an inspiration for us as a material that has a kind of very beautiful blonde wood with a straight grain. And also the Western hemlock is the Washington state tree. So it is the climax species of a native alpine forest. If you leave the landscape in the mountains, the Cascade Mountains or most mountains, in alpine areas of Washington, the Western hemlock tree will become the dominant species, and they will become very large, old growth with a dense canopy and densely forested tree. So we like to think about our work kind of like a forest where there's a natural ecology and there's a natural growth to things. And as architects, we ask ourselves how our buildings can be as natural and organic as they can be. So, you know, while we do use a lot of the sort of standard green home features like, you know, high efficiency fixtures and high performance mechanical systems, green materials, we also try to think about green homes and green design as a design opportunity to make places that last a long time, places that people love, places that patina and weather naturally, and most important, places that are designed in a way that they feel in harmony with their natural landscape. So that's why we called it Tsuga Townhomes. And before we talk about the project, we wanted to talk a little bit about Whitman Estes and who we are as architects and where we came from and how that belief system has inspired what we did with Tsuga Townhomes. So this is a small cabin in the Hood Canal near Hansville across the Puget Sound. And when we started the office, we became known for these small cabins that had very beautiful landscapes in native forests or waterfronts or sensitive ecological areas. And we became very comfortable with making these small footprints that sat very lightly on the land. So this project is very nestled into the landscape, where you have large windows and high windows and walkways and outdoor decks, so that the people who live here have a very close connection to the outdoors, and they are bird watchers and nature lovers. And so those projects are all very satisfying and wonderful. And we still do a lot of these projects that are connected to nature. But then we started thinking about, how do you make a more high density urban building, like a townhome project, when you have a lot of building you're trying to get on a small site, and you're in a more urban setting and there's not very much nature. How do you make that same feeling? So we tried to use landscape strategies. Our office is landscape designers as well as architects. So the structure of this presentation is around how to look at landscape strategies and connecting with nature as a way that architecture can feel more green. So a few notes about my personal history. I was raised and spent my early life in Eastern Washington and Northern Idaho, in these very big landscapes, which were, I lived on a cattle ranch and wheat farm. And so the landscape was very, very untouched. You had big fields and pastures, and very few built structures. And the structures that were built were very simple utilitarian structures. Like the left is the Lions Ferry Bridge in Eastern Washington. And so it has this kind of simplicity and beauty. And then on the right, it's a simple hay barn in the Mission Creek Valley near Cul-de-sac, Idaho. And so I was very inspired by these simple, what are called, vernacular or just kind of utilitarian structures that are just performing their own purpose. So the left bridge is just built out of a very efficient steel trestle with girders, steel girders, and then steel trusses. And so the shape of it and the beauty comes from an expression of its purpose. And then on the right, the little hay barn is the same, has the same logic, where the diagonal wood and the minimal eaves and the size of the openings are just structured based on their function and use. So we at Webnestis, we see a lot of beauty and inspiration, and how to make simple structures that are juxtaposed in a big landscape. Tsuga Townhomes then is, to get into just the overview of it, it was this challenge for us of how do you make a very large building and a urban street along a arterial road. How do you make that feel also connected to nature when you have buildings all around you and you have 3 stories, or some cases 4 stories. So that was the challenge we were trying to do, and what we lead to and reach from were these landscape strategies. So we used 3 landscape strategies: bring the land up, expanding thresholds, and then borrowed landscape. And so those 3 things we'll talk about specifically within this building. So on the right, you can see the pulled apart axonometric view. So the left is the main house along Highland Parkway. So you come in to the front door off a small porch, and then you have a main bedroom and a bathroom on the lower level. And then the main living level is 1 story up. So you have the kitchen, dining, living on the 2nd level, which is a more, so a little quieter because you're raised up from the street. Then the 3rd level, you have, again, 2 bedrooms, bathroom, and laundry room. And then on the right-hand side, you see the duplex. So the duplex opportunity was that it was a 40% steep slope along 8th Avenue Southwest, and people advised us, and real estate people advised us, to not build on the slope because they thought it would be expensive and difficult and stall the project. But we ignored their advice, and because we were, as well as being the architects, we were also the developers and general contractors. We had this opportunity to to experiment and do something that was a little bit more within our control, because we felt like as designers we'd be able to navigate the slope. And we did so by getting a exemption from the 40% restriction on the steep slope. So the duplex then was able to be nestled into the slope, and has a carport on the lower level, then a flex bedroom, and bathroom on the second level. And then the main living level is on the third level, and that level connects back to 8th Avenue Southwest, and that becomes the main living connection back to the landscape. Then you go up to the fourth level, which has another bedroom, the main bedroom, flex, and bathroom, and then the top level roof is a green roof. So the three strategies around here, we'll be talking about these landscape connections, the first of which is bring the land up. So what we mean by that is when you have a single family home or a small cabin in the woods, the land is all around you, so you can just kind of open up to the land. And then in this townhome, because they were stacked and dense, we wanted to still have that feeling of the land, but we wanted to bring the land up to different levels. So we did that in a few different ways. So the first way was that the main house, the so-called land, is considered the second level. So we moved the second level up off of the street. So the ground floor is more parking and private spaces. And then the second level up creates a new land that has views out to the trees and to the sky and to the sun, and an outdoor deck. So that land is kind of raised up off the ground. And then on the duplex side along 8th Avenue, the land was raised up to the third level. So you see B is the kitchen, living, dining. So with that strategy of pushing it into the hillside enabled us to make this connection and patio and deck back to 8th Avenue Southwest. So you effectively, even though you're 3 stories up from here, you effectively are back touching the land here on E. So in a way, it feels like a new ground has been created along 8th Avenue. And then the final layers of land up are the patio threshold from the 4th floor, and then deck, and then from there you go up to the rooftop deck E. So by creating these different layers of bringing the land up, you effectively have living spaces in a townhome where you still feel like you're very connected to nature. So here is the decks off of the duplex towards 8th Avenue Southwest. So this is what I was showing. Again, this is the duplex with the carport, then that goes up to the 2nd floor. Then the 3rd floor has these decks that connect you back to 8th Avenue Southwest and the alley. And then those continue on to the green roof above. And so on the right-hand side, you see those decks. And so again, even though it's on the 3rd floor, by cantilevering over and then building the deck back to the ground, it feels like you're very connected to the ground, and you still have this almost more of a single family relationship to the ground. This overview shows the top view. So going through the main house, this is the 2nd level, which is the main living level. So this has the living room, dining room, and kitchen, and then opening on to D, which is the deck in the back. And then the duplex has the deck connecting back to 8th Avenue Southwest to the main living level there. So you see these main living levels were lifted up to be connected to the ground. And then this is the view of the duplex along 8th Avenue. So this has the decks connecting back to 8th Avenue and the door going in there. And then the final level is on the top. So this is the rooftop deck. And we used what was there with the adjacent trees. So we oriented the views back to the west, where you had an open view towards the Olympics and a setting sun. And then on the north and south, you had adjacent trees. So those created privacy and a feeling of enclosure. And then we made green roofs in front of you. So looking out to the green roofs are in front of you with the guardrail in front of that. So another thing that we do here with all of our projects is the use of natural materials. So we have naturally weathering materials. So the top view shows the steel planter, which is natural hot rolled steel, which patinas and rusts evenly over time. The wood decking is a tight knot cedar decking, which looks out to the west. And then green roof in front of you is something that we installed ourselves. So we have a simple, low-cost way of making a membrane and a drainage mat, lightweight soil, and then planting the sedums. So we allow the green roof, obviously, to have its own life and become like a naturally growing and dynamic kind of carpet in front of that west-facing view. So here again is that green roof. So you see the guardrail out of steel with a wood cap, and then you have these existing trees on both sides of you. Then you look out to the west. So even though you're in a pretty dense neighborhood, when you're there, you feel like you still have this feeling of being in the forest and being very private. And then that's that same view looking out to the west. So here you see the sunset looking out to the Olympics. And again, it feels very private. So while you do have townhomes going on all around you, you're in this kind of private oasis looking out over the green roof with the trees all on all sides of you. So the next second strategy is called expanding thresholds. So what we mean by that is these thresholds are in between spaces. So where you have the transition between a street and a door, or the transition between a stair and a stair landing, or the transition between a balcony and then the adjacent room. These in-between spaces are places where we can see them as more than just a place to move your body through and circulate, but actually as a place to be, which is comfortable. So the first one is the stair landing. So this is the main house, and then you come up the stair landing, and we work really carefully with the code to know the different heights you can do to kind of pull the guardrail back. So normally you would have had a guardrail here, but we were able to pull that back and make the stair landing in a place where it's in between the dining room, the outdoor deck, and the kitchen. So then there's this kind of feeling that you may notice if any of you have cats, that cats are the same way. They kind of like to be in these like in between places. They like to be like in the threshold of the doorway, or they're kind of like always in these in between spaces, because you're kind of like able to see into multiple spots at one, and there's a certain like animal comfort that we have in that. So this threshold is in between the stair landing that goes up and then the outdoor deck with a tree out there. And then you see the same thing on the left. So that while this is kind of a circulation zone, the door is open, and then you can kind of circulate around the outside. These are the same stairs. So on the left, you see the bottom of the stairs, so you can kind of sit and hang out there and be a part of the conversation of the living room while you're moving around up and down the stairs and getting the light coming in from the south. And then on the right-hand side, again, you see the threshold will be there on the bottom with the south sun coming in, and you get these really interesting interplays of light and shadow through the Tsuga screen. So this is the Tsuga wood that I was talking about from the initial slide, which has this kind of blonde, straight grain wood, which is very nice to the touch. So then the next threshold is the what we call the porch, just a simple strategy of making a porch where you can be. And most townhomes you see in Seattle just have a simple door with a sidewalk, and there's really no space to be in between the front door and the outdoor space. So we wanted to take that zone and make that a place where somebody could be and hang out, even if it's very compact. So on the left is the main house entrance, where you see the entrance to the 7782 door on the left, and the sidewalk is on the right. And so we made a little enclosed wooden screen. So there's an enclosed wooden screen that, while it is right next to the street, gives you some privacy and a threshold to be. And on the right, you see the back of the duplex towards 8th Avenue Southwest. So that one was facing towards the technically the alley, but it's effectively a street. So you have the door, and we built a cantilever deck out towards the hill, and then have a small screen wall, so you have some privacy and effectively a back porch. So in all of our homes, we try to have a front porch and a back porch, and we see these as like this prime opportunity as a threshold to be both part of the building and also connected to nature. This is the, on the left, the entrance to the duplex. So the concrete is a naturally weathering unfinished concrete, which was poured in 2-foot lifts. And it has the rain chain that comes down to the bioretention planter. And it shows these kind of natural materials that we employ, which are the front materials are these 8x8 concrete eco-prioric pavers, which are allowing the water to come down and percolate through. And then you have this weathering steel, and then green native plants, vine maples, ferns, salal on top of that, and then the rain chain there you see coming down. So, and on the right, you again have that front door to the main house. So these thresholds, again, are these places that are the in-between, and we render them so that they have a materiality and a feeling of touch. So you want to touch them and let the materials weather naturally and have a place to kind of hang out before you go in the front door. This is the duplex looking back. So this is the stairs going up the duplex. You see the thresholds where the front door is just around the corner from the concrete there. And then you have the stairs coming up, which are kind of transparent. And then at the very top level, you have a small outdoor deck, patio, and then the stairs go up there to the upper roof. Here again is the duplex carports with the concrete wall, the glazing going up, the wood screens, the wood paneling to the right and left. And then on the right, you see these reclaimed wood treads. So these are built out of repurposed 3x12 beams that came out of an inland foods warehouse in Eastern Washington. So they are fir, but fir, because it's about 100 years old, over time it ages and hardens, so it effectively works as a hardwood. So they have a lot of character and patina with the nail holes and some of the knots, and we just kind of sanded them down, put a clear coat on them. And again, it's like our idea of green. You're using recycled materials, but you're also letting a material be naturally weathering. So the stairs are going to get kind of dinged, and stairs are a very high traffic area. So instead of making you see on some homes, people have like kind of a highly finished stairs, or they're very, they use the hardwood and they kind of get scratched and scuffed and dinged up. But whereas, because we use this weathering wood, the green strategy is to let it be a little bit more natural looking. So then when it does get those natural wear and dings, then that can be just part of the age of the house, and it can have a longer lifespan. Now we're on the left, back to the duplex. So this threshold is the zone in between the main bedroom and the deck to the outside. So again, this is it's one of my favorite spaces of the project, where you can kind of be in between the two spaces. You can step outside over a cover, or you can be inside the bedroom. Very protected. And on the right, you have the main kitchen. And here you see some of the materials. So the materials we use as what we call like monolithic, or as masses, as chunks of material. So instead of having cabinets that are like, here's your room and then there's your cabinets as a thing, we do the cabinets as like a wall. So it feels like it's a wall of cabinets. So it does make the room feel bigger because it's integrated and holistic into the wall. And then the fridge sits flush with the cabinets. And then the same with the stone. So instead of having cabinets and the countertops, they read as two things, we try to make this stone feel all as one by wrapping it down the sides and making that middle feeling as an object that you're moving around, and just makes the space feel more calm. And again, we feel like that's more green because you have this very durable stone that goes around, and it's not going to get dinged, or it's going to, I think one of our big beliefs about green design is that beyond the performance of the energy systems and the materials, it's also the ability for the house to have a long lifespan. So how do you make materials that people love and are not trendy? So we feel like I always tell people in our office to try to not be trendy because trendy has a shorter lifespan. It may look like really hot right now, like you have this hot tile or this hot kind of guardrail, or we don't mind paint so much because you can always repaint it. But if you make something more timelessly beautiful, then people are going to leave it there for longer, and it's going to be better for the environment. So the last strategy is called borrowed landscape. So this came from garden design. So we do landscape design, garden design here, and are very inspired by Asian gardens, and which use this idea of borrowed landscape. And in Japanese, garden design is called shake, which means borrowed view. And what they mean by that is when you have a plot of land and you're designing your garden on that plot of land, you think about what you can do on that land, but you also think about what's called the visual field. So the visual field is what you see around you and where your eye stops and rests. So if you can see beyond, and you see trees beyond, or mountains beyond, or sky beyond, and you make that be your visual field, then your whole space feels a lot bigger, and then you feel more comfortable, because humans generally feel comfortable when they can feel protected in a space, but also have a view out to see what's coming. So this borrowed landscape is a strategy from landscape design that we then use in the design of the house. So this example shows the borrowed view would be the corner. So the corner window was placed in a way that it was not looking towards the neighboring house, but it was instead placed towards the tree and the sky. And so that's where the view was. So we moved the window to get the view. And we see that as a very green strategy, because you're using natural light by having windows in a way that people don't have to have blinds on them. That's more light in. In Seattle, you generally want the warmth and the heat gain that come in. So you have this is the east-facing window. So you get this morning light coming in and warming up the house, which is what you want. And then you don't have as much need to close the blinds because it's oriented in a way that you're looking at the tree and the sky. And then on the right, that same window you see from the outside kind of creates this iconic window there. So we see ourselves as like hunters of views, where we go to the site and we look at like, where are the views, where are these borrowed landscapes that we can point towards, and then that's how we compose the facade of the building. And then on the south side of the main house, the same strategy of capturing the view. So we position what we call this iconic window, this mega window, which is 4 windows ganged together. So they're the maximum size that this window product can do. So they're 4 foot by 8 foot panels, which were ganged together and then oriented over this, which was a parking lot. And so that you can see in the facade here, instead of putting windows here where they would be looking towards the apartment building, we put them right facing towards where we could capture the south sun and a view over the parking lot. And then you get this passive heating from the south side, which is generally what you want for most months in Seattle. And then some of the smaller views are here. They are on the left, you have the tile going up with the into the bathrooms. You have tile and a borrow view into the forest. On the right, you have a borrow view into the woods. So again, even when in the private spaces like bathrooms and bedrooms, we try to borrow these views into nature to the side. And so now zooming back, this is the overall project. You see the main house in front with the double height space with these windows to the corner. Here you have the windows into the stair, so the views are filtered, and then you have the stairs up to the green roof above. So that's the end of the project.
Great project. What's your favorite space, Matt?
I think my favorite space is the the main house in the front. It's just pretty nice to sit in that double height space. The rooftop is pretty nice outside, and then the double height space here, like when you're in
Mhm.
the living room, sitting up there is pretty great. Then I see a note here from Tracy, um, asking, with those tall internal spaces and windows, how is the warmth, comfort, and energy efficiency? So that's a great question. I mean, in talking to the people who live here, they have, what we try to do is make, the maximum windows for natural light, but then orient them in a way that you're not getting overly hot, which is more of a problem if you have west facing windows. So in Seattle, you usually want more sun than less because it's usually cloudy here. So what I heard from the residents there is that it's pretty comfortable, because if it, they usually welcome the thermal gain that you get from these. We have these big south-facing windows, and so usually you're wanting it to warm up. But then on the days when, like August, September, there's usually a period here in Seattle where you don't want that heat. They have shades they pull, but then they also have these operable windows. So you open the windows, and then any heat that does come is able to evacuate through cross ventilations. So what we try to do is kind of, in Seattle anyway, for this climate, we try to get a lot of ways to warm up the building, and then create natural passive ventilation. So if you see on the plan, where's the plan? Like here on the plan, we have it set up where most of these windows are operable. So it's like an operable window there, and there. So basically on 4 sides of the room, if you have operable windows, you can get a breeze going through, and then you can also evacuate through the top. So you also have doors and windows in the top level. So that as the heat rises, you can pull the heat out and then bring in cool air from below. So I think that I would say that they're fairly efficient. And then the mechanical heating and cooling is done through these mini split units, which they're telling me they don't really turn on very often. They rarely have to turn them on. And I know their energy bills are very, very minimal, because most of the heating and cooling is able to be done passively. So I hope we've answered your question.
Mhm. Shelby or Haley, Haley or, yeah, Shelby, do you want to talk about what the real estate market was like when you sold it?
Well, it was interesting because it was 2 years ago, and the real estate market was a little bit softer than it is now. But we had multiple offers on these projects, and I think mainly it was because there was nothing else like it out there. So people definitely searched for green, and they were immediately drawn to it. It was really fantastic. It was really, but in general, it's so unique that I just think that it really stands out compared to everything else that's out there. There's nothing else out there like it.
They did sell really quickly, right?
Yeah,
They went pretty fast.
really quick with multiple offers. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that some of the buyers had been filtering their search for green homes.
Correct.
When they were
Yeah.
looking for homes, they filtered for green, and so that also created value because there was a more limited number of offerings within the classification of green homes.
Right. There was a lot of competition at the time, and it didn't affect the sale of these units at all. Meaning a lot of inventory at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You did a good job.
And then what are your thoughts, Haley, about the green roof, about how the green roof, how people see the green roof when they're looking for townhomes?
So that was interesting because, I had personally never seen it, and I don't think a lot of people had seen it, the people that toured it, and it was definitely created, right now space, especially now, is such a premium to be able to go up on a top of a roof and have the privacy and the greenery and not just have this, like you go up on most townhome projects and it's just this gray, floor that's basically the ceiling material. It's called, what is that called? It's that
The,
coating that they
the
put on all the rooftops.
oh right, yeah. Normally they don't have wood. They have just the
Yeah, it's just a gray coating and it's just sterile and it doesn't look good. And so the green, it's just so unique and very different. And I hope your projects incorporate more of the green roof, because it definitely was a selling feature for sure, because it's like your yard, in the urban setting, you don't really have yards anymore. It's all cement. So to have green around you was really cool.
I think now with COVID, because people are wanting to be outside,
Right.
until this darn smoke hit, everyone was wanting to be outdoors. So having these places outside where you could,
Yeah,
people weren't going to parks or traveling as much, so you could kind of travel in your own home.
yeah, they're really lucky to be living there. I'll tell you that right now. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know that the occupants, the residents are spending a lot of time this time of year up there.
Yeah. Indoor, outdoor.
Yeah, and we have a question from Ching. Hi, Ching. So she's asking the big windows and bar reviews. One of the question is the wood deck hold up pretty well in the wet weather? So that's a good question, because we use natural wood. So if you go to the, let's see here. I'll just go to the photo of the roof. So the wood is tight knot cedar. So, we have if you put a coating on it, then actually what causes the wood to degrade is more the sun than the water. So the water doesn't so much cause the wood to degrade as does the UV of the sun. So if you put a UV coating on it, then it will more naturally protect itself. So we have some decks like this where we put like a dark brown semi-transparent stain on there, and they can, if you keep the stain up, every couple of years and keep it covered from the sun, it will last, a fairly long time. And then also important to make sure it drains down. So as long as wood can get wet and then dry out, it'll last a long time. What causes wood to rot is also when it kind of is damp. So if it's just sitting there all the time.
Can you go back to the shot that showed the leaves on the previous photo that showed the maple leaves? Yeah. So my point there is perfect. That's a great shot. Now, one way to increase the longevity of wood is anytime that you have organic debris sitting on the wood itself, if you can just take a minute to blow or brush that stuff aside, that will eliminate the dampness from just sitting on the wood for an extended period of time. So a little bit of maintenance will go a long ways to increase longevity.
Right. That's a great point. And also that stands for like moss. So I think where we see decks holding at best is where they get some full sun, they can dry out, and they're, like Shelby said, you keep them clean, and you keep like any kind of moss from growing on them. So if you, I think with some maintenance, they do take more maintenance than a synthetic non-living material. So, but with some maintenance, they can have a fairly long lifespan.
Sure. And I think, the point there would be a very small amount of time invested will go a long ways. So, I mean, if you can, by looking at the picture, you can imagine just taking the leaves off of the decking would just take a few minutes.
Yes.
And
right.
I think, so you're not inheriting a high maintenance scenario there. It's just a situation. Let's just get the leaves off the decking. every so often, it's going to really help.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great point. So there's another question. Are you collecting gray water using the green roof natural filtration? So the water is collected in the roof, and then it goes down into the planters. So some of the water, obviously the water that falls on the green roof irrigates the green roof, and then any overflow from that goes into a downspout which then goes into the bioretention planters. So then basically the water is used for yes, you could use for irrigation. So on the bottom of some of these, like this here, you see that what this chain comes down. So the water is tracked down, and then it's used for some of the plantings as irrigation water. And then in a sense it is filtered, because as it goes between the different green planters, most of the water just gets used by the plants, and then only like in a very high storm, a very high water event where you're getting like 2 or 3 inches of rain in a day, I think only in those cases does the water get so saturated that it overflows the planting beds, and then it goes into a drain and then back into the city. So, and the city of Seattle is pretty invested in rainwater infiltration and bioinfiltration. So a lot of these strategies are just, we want to do them because they're very green, but they're also actually required by the city of Seattle. If that answers your question. And Shelby, what are you seeing in terms of in the real estate market for green homes? Like, are you seeing that green features and green homes are having higher demand, and especially now with the focus on health and wellness?
Well, I think more so now with the recent, with concerns of health with COVID, and people are looking for more healthy environments and want to spend time in a healthy environment to just feel better about their overall health and their daily lives. So yes, I think what the green element does for demand, and I think for people's interest, is that they want to gravitate towards something a little different or unique in the marketplace. So if they have 10, or let's say 5 or 10 options of just a standard non-green offering, then the buyer would gravitate towards the green offering, because the perception is they're getting something more unique and sustainable, especially in an environment in an environment and a mindset of Seattle. People are more environmentally conscious. So I do see that as a strong marketing or a draw. Yes.
Yes.
And to differentiate our project and being green, in respect to the other projects that are not, it's going to add more demand and more eyes, because people are really wanting to, they see enough product out there that is just so, it doesn't differentiate itself, and it just seems more of the same and more the norm of what people get used to seeing. So I think the demand is getting more sophisticated and more interested in unique and health.
Right.
Yeah. So I feel going green for the 9th Ave project is definitely the way to go. And I think, especially to soften sightlines and view corridors, in an urban setting, is really helps the feel of the living spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Matt, one thing that I think would be helpful, getting back to the real basics of what differentiates or what qualifies as green, or what would be the 3 main points?
You're asking me, like, what would I define as the 3 main green points?
Yes. I mean, if a buyer is like starting at ground zero and they're like, well, what does green mean?
Well, I think number one is energy and water use. So I think green means having a building that's designed in a way that it uses minimal energy. Like it's always cool to me to see like these new construction projects that have quite a bit more square footage than an older house, but their energy bills are far lower. Like their energy bills with the we have the high performance air source heat pump mini split, heating and cooling, and then we have natural on-demand water heater. So they use very minimal energy, like and so your heating and cooling bills are very, very low. And then with the passive strategies of passive natural daylighting and then passive ventilation with operable windows, building performance, which you can be measured in terms of energy use, I think is number one. And then number two, I would say materials. People want to see the green materials. So, we use as many natural materials like the cedar wood, the oak flooring, the steel guardrails. We believe that like natural materials, which are expressed in what they are, they're not like a veneer material. Solid wood materials, we feel are a lot more sustainable because they're not going to have to be replaced. You see that with like the countertops, like quartz countertops, solid surface countertops, solid wood floors. These are plywood cabinets. So materials, the wood screens, materials that are solid, that are going to be able to, that came from a sustainable source. I mean, wood is arguably one of the most sustainable materials because it's renewable. So, the trees will grow back, trees keep coming, trees are good for the environment. If, you harvest trees, you were supposed to be growing new trees. So wood is arguably one of the more green materials that you can use because of where it comes from. It's renewable. So I think buyers are looking at that. I think people think of materials, both where materials came from, how much environmental impact the production of the material used, how much, damage to the earth. There's always some damage, or a lot of damage from making materials and doing construction, but to the degree you can minimize that is good. Steel is considered to us green because it's almost all recycled. So very little steel ever ends up in a landfill. Like most steel now is made from recycled steel. So in some ways, using steel is also a fairly green material. And then I guess the third one would be, the third one is probably just what we think. I don't know if other people feel this way, but we believe that green is also the design, the layout, like this arrangement of spaces. So if you can make spaces that are very thoughtfully laid out, that are the right size, that have the right relationships, that are flexible, that over time, this is going to be left alone. So people are basically like, you're trying to make a place that people aren't going to remodel in 10 or 15 or 20 years, because that's not sustainable. If if you're tearing out materials and redoing materials, if you're tearing out bathrooms, because the tile was like very trendy 15 years ago, but then 15 years later it looks really bad and you're tearing that out, that's not sustainable. So I think for us, just good design, like timeless design that feels like it's very thoughtful and feels fresh and feels right, but also has kind of lifespan where if you came back, 15, 20, 30 years later, it would also feel right and feel good. So having good sustainable design layout and design use, I think, is the third design sustainable green principle we use.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, somebody asked a question. Are you looking to achieve or have achieved an aspect of living building challenge? Great question. We did not on this project. We have had other projects where we did some of the pedals. So the living building challenge, for others that maybe not be familiar, is it's a very high performance metric system that tracks all the different categories of materials, water use, energy use, relationship to existing systems and footprints, and it's a really wonderful, very high bar. So like I think the Bullitt Center on Capitol Hill was one of the first full living building challenge buildings. So we did not on this project follow that. We followed the 4-star Built Green, which is a system that is more oriented towards production builder housing, and just a little bit easier to track the different strategies. A lot of them are the same strategies that you would track with Living Building Challenge. So, but that's a great thought that, we could track the same metrics, the same systems within the petals of the living building.
It's 11 o'clock.
So, but it's a great system. And I think that having as a goal, Living Building Challenge to be all buildings built would be wonderful. If we can, a lot of it has to do with economics, because it is cost money to do the upgrades in the systems and also to track it. So, but I think we'd love to do that on other projects, especially when you get into a little higher dollar real estate markets like Bellevue or downtown or Capitol Hill. The real estate market can sustain a bigger investment in more high performance solutions like the Living Building Challenge asks you to do. I hope that answers your question.
Can you go to a slide that shows the deck area of the duplex?
Yeah.
That'd be great. Now, if being familiar with the site, the busier of the arterials is out in front off of Highland Parkway. And so one thing that was captured here in extending the duplex towards the back of the light and building into the slope allowed access from the less busy and congested area, and created privacy and a pleasant place for people to extend out of their home and into the back area that's quiet and has less traffic. So I feel like that really made the project more user friendly and pleasant, and it increased the amount of space that became usable. I mean, if you can imagine what it would be if you just have the back wall of the duplex without the decking.
Yeah, it would kind of be a bit, less livable. And I feel, especially in COVID times, places that you can make your own and access within nature are just so vital, especially when you're forced to be stuck inside. So.
And then you also had a lot of space from where the deck starts and the right of way back here created a sense of openness.
Right.
That allowed for more setback and privacy. Where you didn't really have that on the Highland Parkway side.
Right. Yeah, this one definitely feels a bit more kind of interior.
So it almost feels like the right of way becomes part of your usable outdoor space. By building into the hillside allowed for all these flexibility and more openness and more space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with you.
And I do remember that we were, evaluating what to do with this slope.
Yeah.
At the time of development and purchase. That was a somewhat of a concern. So we were able to turn that into an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really, I think made the project more than just kind of, the typical facing one street kind of project. It has many points of access that I think gives it a kind of a second life in a way.
Well, and the other part of this is the slope itself. You can see the back wall of the duplex there is only 1.5 stories in height.
Right.
Whereas with, if the slope in effect creates a natural barrier, rather than having a 3-story wall looking at, you're seeing less elevation of the structure, which I think is also a very, like from a sightline standpoint, much more appealing.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to kind of dwarf you at, at its main point of
Yeah,
access.
you don't have a 3-story wall or elevation of a structure to look at. It's broken up by the hillside. It's very nice.
Right, yeah, exactly. I see we have a question. How is water runoff handled in this area? So we dealt with it primarily through bioretention planters that carry it from the green roof down the side of the building into those steel planters that you saw at different various points along the site that then we used to use for irrigation was kind of the thinking with regards to that. Yeah, we definitely wanted to think about it because of how much water we know, we get in Seattle. So one of our things we like to do in our project is really try to embrace the water and not be afraid of it, even using a flat roof, which is, something that you're required to do with your landscape and architect. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Any other questions?
I have a question about y'all's role as architect, developer, contractor on this project, and I guess how that influenced the overall design, and if y'all had a clientele in mind for who was going to be occupying this once the project was complete.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking it. It really, really impacted the way that, we designed the space and then also how it was built, which was actually a really great learning experience for us as a firm. Thinking of, the building, we mostly came from the perspective of an architect and, a landscape architect. The clientele we had in mind was, of course, the potential buyer, but then also the various clients we've had before and what qualities they looked for in a space. And, we'd seen a lot of, the kind of developer housing that goes on in Seattle and how it really lacked a sense of humanity and a sense of embracing the landscape. So we wanted to kind of bring what we usually do in kind of more single family residences and bring that to the market where it's, still cost efficient, but by using the really smart, simple strategies of putting windows in a particular place, using simple materials. Of course, it was like a huge learning curve on a lot of aspects of it, and actually has influenced how we've designed going forward. But I think what it allowed, since as an architect, you're not often in the role of developer, and so sometimes you don't always see your design all the way to the end of how you want to see it. So the unique opportunity this spring was to see our project all the way through and really look at our designs and how they worked from an economic standpoint, but also from an efficiency standpoint and kind of the client we were looking for perspective. So yeah, it was fun. It was an adventure for sure. And we did a lot of, we, as a team, a firm, we went to the site a lot and, did a lot of hands-on type thing, which was cool. And yeah, it was fun to be the developer. A little stressful though too. Thanks, Nick.
Great,
Any
thank
other
you.
questions?
I could also add a few more thoughts to
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I think everything Faith said is right. And then just also understanding, like, as patterns change, as the city changes and how people use space, we wanted the space to feel adaptable. So on the one hand, it was thinking about kind of like the demographic of like a young family or, first time buyers and what those kind of people at that phase of their life are doing. But we also thought about it in terms of flexibility. So, one of the units we kept to rent, and it was interesting that you saw young families looking at it, but you also saw some situations of like mother-daughter or, like intergenerational living. So I think one of the benefits of the townhome is that you have bedrooms on different levels, so you can have people living with some privacy. You can have bedrooms on the top level and bottom level, and people can live together but still have some privacy. And then the other part of it is like the working from home. So thinking about how people can have flexible spaces where they can work from home. So it's been interesting to see. I've been in both of the units since COVID, and it's been interesting to see how there are different people are using the work from home spaces differently. Some are working in the main living kitchen area. Some people are working in the bedroom. Some people, have like formally converted the flex space into a home office. So I think in terms of the developer and our target client, like thinking about future flexibility and how buildings can adapt and have many lives, it's also an element of sustainability and green design, having the kind of space that can adapt itself to other uses as circumstances change.
Do y'all foresee continuing to do more of like an architect, developer, contractor role on some future projects, or is this kind of a one-off just because of an opportunity that opened up at the time?
We do have we're continuing to do it. We have a project on 9th Avenue, like 9th and Henderson in West Seattle. It's a 14-unit townhome that's in permitting right now. So we're planning to start construction on that, hopefully. We were going to try to start this fall, but it got pushed back a little bit, so probably in the spring. So yes, we're continuing to do more projects like this and scaling up to bigger sites.
Exactly.
Great, thank you.
Matt, how did you feel like the experience of being a developer and architect was different than our typical project?
Yes, it was very different because normally we design buildings and landscapes and we draw details, and then we lean on the builder to execute all those things. So it was great experience for me because I was literally out there on the site, with the boots and the formwork and rebar and working very closely with the subcontractors that were out there. So it gave me a great appreciation for how hard it is to build a building and how long it takes, and especially when you do things that are more complex or more ambitious than just the basic thing. It gave me a great connection with the trades, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed all the tradespeople, the concrete workers, the framers, the drywallers, the painters. They were all a really great team of people, who brought a lot of pride to their work. So it was a great experience kind of working with them hands-on, which you get differently when you're the general contractor and you're with the contracts and the details in place. I would definitely recommend it to like all architects to go through the experience, because I think it makes you a better designer because you can empathize with the physical hands-on experience of being there and understand what the materials are doing and what the capacity and opportunity is for different materials.
Definitely. It's a great answer.
Great question.
Are there any other questions? If not, we can gap a little longer. I don't know. It was a fun project I came at the tail end, but it was a fun project to work with. Yeah.
So now that you have this slide up here that really shows these windows in the corner here of the front house.
Mm-hmm. Wait, sorry, what was the question?
No, the question is, I was just wanting to get some additional information on the type of windows that you put in here on the front house that are on the corner there.
Yes, we used Anderson windows. I don't know the exact dimensions, but we tried to just use off-the-shelf windows, but in a really smart way, so they almost seemed custom. And then we had that black kind of strip with the windows to really accent them.
And did you gravitate towards a higher noise reduction due to the busyness of Highland Parkway for those choices?
I don't know, Matt, do you know, with regards to the corner windows, did we look at the noise as being an issue from island?
Yeah, you don't notice it so much because you're one level above. It's more of an issue on the ground floor. But they're very high performance windows. They're Fibrex, high performance windows. So there's kind of a direct relationship between the higher energy performance window and a higher sound performance because they're just a lot tighter frame and a lot of the soundproofing and energy savings you get are also how you install them and making sure they're in there straight and they're well sealed. So they are a better performing sound as well by nature of being a better performing thermal window. And yeah, you don't really notice the noise when you're in there because they're fixed windows too, so those don't open towards the street. So when they're a sealed window like that, they're pretty good at keeping the sound out.
Great. Any other questions, Shelby? Any hardball ones?
At this point, but going with the windows you chose, they were a lot more expensive than, say, a typical vinyl or something that was less high performance.
Probably like maybe 20% more. I wouldn't say they were like if you compare them to like a Ply Gem vinyl. Yeah, they're probably 20 or 30% more, but they're very affordable. They're a Fibrex window, so they're not a high-end window by any means, but you definitely get a bump up in performance and also strength. The other reason we don't advise vinyl windows is that they fail over time, especially when you get these big windows. Like we've had projects where we did a window the same size and they put in very inexpensive vinyl windows, and then the vinyl frames are very soft. They're not strong. So then over time, as the wood is going to move, the building is always going to move a little bit. If you have a soft vinyl window in there, then as the frame moves, it's more prone to breaking the seal. So we've had that happen on jobs. So also another kind of sustainable aspect is if you use higher performing windows, they're going to be stronger frame, and again, you're going to be having a longer lifespan, so they're less prone to failure, which would result in having them be torn out and go to the landfill and get a new one.
Mm-hmm. Or when you go to sell eventually as a seller and you have failed windows, then that typically comes up as something that remove and replace to get your house sold if you're in the resale market, which can be costly.
Right. Yeah. So hopefully these will have a longer lifespan. We hope. We'll see. But so far they're holding up really well.
Great.
So Faith, this goes till 1 o'clock, right?
Yeah, I saw a person just joined.
Just joining. I don't know. Do you want to just
questions? Or?
You want to just maybe wait for a few minutes and then just do one? And is it tomorrow or is it today only?
It's also we're only here today.
Mm-hmm. What's going on? I thought the date said it's tomorrow also.
Yeah, there's other sites tomorrow.
Other sites, I see. So our site is today and the other sites are tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have Joyce there. She's wanting to wait for it. Do you want to?
Matt, do you want to talk about this area? This special area?
Sure. This was the bioretention. So it brings the on the left-hand slide, it's bringing the water down from the rooftop, and then it's captured in the steel planter, and that is what you see, the green area there. So it's a natural irrigation. And then on the right, you have these reclaimed wood treads that were fir. So they have some kind of patina and character from their previous use. So we reuse those which is good for the environment and also gives you kind of a more durable tread that is can kind of take some wear over time.
Yeah. Yeah,
So maybe,
nice
go ahead.
It's a nice feature for this space where, would just kind of seem like a space for cars, but it kind of became a nice accent feature and brought a little bit of that nature to this kind of more paved area.
Yeah. So Faith, I'm thinking there's a couple of new people, Joyce and Shannon here. Maybe you want, why don't you just run through it again from the beginning?
One more time. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll do an abbreviated version and
Yeah,
maybe
just with the, because I think we're done at 1, but we have a
yeah,
couple new folks here.
yeah, I
Yeah, why
can
don't you just do one more thing from the
and
top?
Shannon. So I'll just do a little abbreviated version, but yeah,
Yeah.
Tsuga Townhomes. We were inspired by the Western hemlock, so it's in the name and a wood we use, which the scientific name is Tsuga. Traditionally, we've done architecture that's really rooted in the landscape, and we started off with mainly cabins and more secluded areas, and this really got us thinking of how we can take the kind of experience of a more rural setting and how we can bring it into the city with a couple of simple strategies. We also are really closely tied to kind of more rural landscapes and vernacular architecture, as some of our members of our team are from ranches, which have a very, simple materiality and then also very functional purpose behind everything. So for Tsuga, it was a 3-unit urban infill. There was just one house there. We reused part of the foundation. And one of the big questions was, how do we fit 3 units onto this relatively narrow and small site while giving the privacy and the landscape for the people who are going to live there? So since we were the developer, one of the opportunities was to, we decided to build into the slope, whereas most developers might not have gone that direction, but it actually brought us a lot of opportunities. As you can see with this strategy about bringing the land up, which is kind of building the project so that it meets the topography. And so here you can see the section, how the duplexes sit into the slope, which provides them access to 8th Avenue and gives them their own kind of front porch. And so by building into the slope, these units have their own interfaces with different streets, and makes it much more than just 3 units living on one site. It really expands the whole kind of the feeling of the site, and then the opportunities for nature and landscape to come in. And yeah, this is a view of the back duplexes and how we use that front porch to really root it in the site. And you can see that tree, we built the decking around it so that we would allow it to live and breathe in the space. So that was a big portion of our design thought, was to keep as much of the existing trees and landscape as we could on the slope, because as you can see, there's such beautiful large trees there that provide actually really great views for the units inside. So yeah, 3 units on one site. We really tried to give as many opportunities to go outside as possible, and especially in this kind of environment now that we're living in COVID and stuff, it was really important for us to give as many opportunities to people to sit outside while being part of the conversation that goes on inside. So in this photo, the back or the front porch for the duplexes sits right next to the kitchen, which is where most people congregate. So it was a good spot for that, so people can be outside but still feel like they're part of what's going on inside. And then the green roof and the rooftop deck was a really important feature. You can see the green roof has kind of a mixed sedum and succulent plantings, and they really are just this organic, beautiful growth that allow the view from the rooftop decks to expand out. And you can see it here, it's just really vibrant, and it meshes and blends really well with the landscape that we kept, the trees that we kept. And as part of being the slope, it really, you're nestled right in those trees. So it's pretty amazing from the rooftop deck. And here's another view of it. In this way, it's even green roofs bring nature into the project. So you don't just have to do, keeping the trees, which was really important to us, but also utilizing any place we could to add plants, which is just good for the environment, good for the building, and great for the user. So thresholds was also an important design tenet for us. You can see the 2 doors on either side of the kitchen, the threshold of how the stairs meets the kitchen area. And yeah, people and animals like to occupy thresholds. So creating as many spaces to go in and out or just to see beyond is just so important in a urban setting. And so you can see we use that to the max here. And we have our Tsuga 2x2 hemlock screen attached to steel that allows kind of a dappled light to come into the area. And then we kept our interior design really simple with very natural and minimal palette to make it last as long as possible. And to really, you can see the cabinets, they're shiny, so nature is brought in, and the movement of the trees you could see also reflected there. This is another look into the living room and the stairs, where people can sit on the stairs and still be part of the living room and not just making the stairs its own kind of corridor or place to get quickly through. It's its own space that has its own transition, and that was important to us. Here are the two thresholds of the front porches of the main house and the duplex that's on the right. These were important to give visual boundaries for privacy, but then be open enough that they're still connected with the streets that they sit near, which was important to us, not to turn our back on the neighbors or the streets, but embrace city living while still having your own private areas full of nature. And yeah, we talked about this a little bit, about just bringing plantings wherever we possibly could. This is the bioretention steel planter, and a rangeing that brings the water down into it. Yeah, this just provides a spot of green in a relatively paved paver space that also is a really nice feature. So places that cars are parked don't have to be boring. They can actually be very interesting and beautiful. And this is a look at the duplexes. You can see how the windows accent the stairs of the duplexes, which provide privacy in the other areas, but then still visual interest of the main house, and also a connection with community of, being able to see your neighbor in a, proper setting, instead of just making the whole face of the building a blank kind of space. It provides a little bit of life while retaining privacy. Yeah, and this is just more of the stairs and transparency of materials and layering of different materials. You can see on the left, there's the rammed concrete, there's the steel planter, there's the wood fence, there's the wood siding. So everything kind of isn't just one material. It really kind of integrates together, weaves a whole visual palette and like in every different part of the spaces. And the stairs themselves were reclaimed for treads, and there's the steel railing, and we didn't want to close off the stairs, as we said before. We wanted to keep them open so light can go through, and so that the whole building feels very connected and not closed off. And then here's some of the interiors. This is the duplex. On the left is the duplex bedroom, which we extend the view of the space by having that door that opens right onto a deck that goes up to the green roof. The simple material palette, and then also the door there is a simple way of making the space feel larger and more connected to nature. And also the materials just will last a really long time. They just don't go out of style. And on the right, you can see the kitchen of the main house. We used blocks of kind of materials in order to make the space feel really large. So the island is just one gray volume of quartz, and then the cabinets are these white prefab cabinets that have a gloss to them so you can see the light reflected. And then for the third strategy, we like to borrow as much landscape, which we've talked about before. Here in the living room of the main house, you can see we framed the corner of the building very specifically so you could see the street, feel connected to your neighbors, but also it frames the landscape, which we did in all the windows in the house, was to increase privacy, but then connect people to nature, which was important. And then in this one, you can see we did a similar move by creating this really large window by the stairs by using four off-the-shelf windows and putting them together, which lets them look onto the city, get as much light as possible, but still looking at economics. And then here you can see also how in the duplex, how that slope really nestles all of the rooms into nature. You can see how the trees, it just seems like one step away. And even in the bathroom, the windows just add so much light And by using kind of a glossy tile that never will go out of style, it just really embraces the nature around it. And yeah, that's our 3-unit project. Fun to do. Yeah, we learned a lot through it, and we're happy that it turned out pretty close to how we imagined it, and the people who are occupying it seem very happy. So any other questions remaining? That was a quick overview, so please, I can go back to another slide if someone wants to learn more about one feature or another. Well,
Very nice, Faith. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. I think if you paid for it, this will be recorded and you can access it later if you want to look at it more closely. Yeah, we were so happy that everyone came and participated in this. And yeah, it's great.
Yes, too. And did you want to, Faith, make a little, there's an event with the Green Home Tour coming up, right? There was another event in a couple of weeks, I think, that we were going to speak about. Let me see if I can find that.
Yeah, that's right. They do have something coming up. I believe.
Who was the
Jenny?
Jenny, right? Yeah, Jenny sent something.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the Building Slam. So on October 13th and 20th, there's the Green Building Slam. So it's part of the fall conference, and it's a 10 stories of green building for 10 minutes over the 2 nights. So there's an opportunity to network, learn from other people, and the link for that is northwestgreen.org. So I'll put that in the chat right now. So that's an event coming up if anyone wants to log into that. So there, I just put that in the chat. So check it out on www.northwestgreen.org.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Thanks everyone for joining.
Yeah, thanks for joining. I know people have been jumping in and out, and we appreciate everyone who's still here. And if you need any more details, just please do get in touch via our website, whitmanestes.com.
Yeah, and this project's there too, so you can look at the images there as well.
Yep.
Well, thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Faith. That was great.